Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Callan. Today it is close to Australia Day, which means two things, Lamingtons and Pavlova combined. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to make a Pavlova Lamington. Let's get started. Into the mixing bowl, what I'm going to do is put 8 eggs, 275 grams of caster sugar, and the zest of half a lemon. I'm going to also put in the seeds of 2 vanilla pods. So let's go for it. Perfect. So in the mixing bowl is the 8 eggs. I'm going to go ahead and put in half a lemon of zest, 275 grams of caster sugar, and I can put the seeds of 2 vanilla pods. And what I'm going to do is just put the mixer down and turn the mixer on a medium speed for about 15 minutes. We really want to get those eggs really nice and fluffy, and that's what's going to make this sponge so light. Perfect, so the eggs have been whisking now for about 15 minutes, and as you can see, they're really light and fluffy. You probably wouldn't even tell it's eggs, they're that white and creamy. And they've definitely doubled, if not tripled in size. So now I'm going to mix 275 grams of self-raising flour into the egg mix, being really careful not to over-mix it, because what's going to happen is every time you mix it, you're knocking air out of the mix, and what keeps this sponge really nice and fluffy is having air in it. So goal number 1, don't knock any air out. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And then all I'm going to do is, using a folding action, really gently fold that flour into the eggs. And pretty much you just want to mix this until all the flour is incorporated. You don't want to over mix it because you're just going to knock air out of it. Now the flour is all incorporated, I'm just going to take a little bit of mixture out of this, about 1/3, into a separate bowl and mix in the butter. The reason why I'm putting it into a small amount of mix is because it is going to knock the air out of the mixture. And what we don't want to do is knock the air out of all of it. We can knock the air out of a little bit of it and then slowly incorporate that back in, but we do not want to knock the air out of all of that. So now that the butter's all mixed through the flour, it's time to pour it into the tin. You see some people when they pour it from a height about here, you really want to try and get it as close to the bottom of the base as you can so that you don't knock any air out. I think that's one of the most important things about this recipe, is that you keep as much air as you can inside the mix. When you're working with the sponge, you really want to treat it like a baby. So when you shut the oven door, make sure it's really gentle, because any sudden bumps and movements is going to knock the air out of that mixture. And done. So the sponge has had about 35 minutes in the oven and it's looking really nice and golden brown. I'm just going to take it out of the tin now, let it cool down, and then we're ready to assemble. So I've let the sponge cool down, and now all I'm going to do is put it onto a chopping board and slice the sponge up into those cubes that we all know as Lamingtons. So I'm just going to take off the edges of the sponge, and I hate to say it, but this becomes lunch. And all I'm going to do now is chop the sponge into cubes the size that I want for the Lamingtons. So that's the Lamington sponge cut up. Now what I'm going to do is melt some chocolate in the microwave, bring it back, and we're going to coat these bad boys. So the sponge is cut, and I'm just going to put these pieces of sponge onto the tray. And now I'm just going to spoon this chocolate over the top of the cake and just let it drip down the side, just giving it a bit of a hand. Just really get that chocolate smothered over the top and get it to start dripping down the sides of that cake. Now that those cakes are slightly covered with the chocolate, just going to go ahead and sprinkle that desiccated coconut on top. And then once you see enough coconut sprinkled on the top of each one, we're just going to go ahead and throw some coconut at the sides of each one to get all that chocolate that's hanging on the sides, and make sure that this Pavlova Lamington really sings of Lamington. Done. And now that the Lamingtons are covered in coconut, just got to put them somewhere to cool down for a little bit and let that chocolate start to set. So we've done the Lamington part of the Pavlova Lamingtons. Now it's time to get onto the Pavlova itself. So in here I'm going to put 2 egg whites and get that whisking on low, while over on the stove I've got some sugar and water boiling up to 118 degrees that I'll then pour in here. Perfect. So in here I've got 2 egg whites that I've just whisked, and in here I've got 150 grams of sugar and 50 grams of water that I've just boiled on the stove to 118 degrees. I'm now going to turn this back on and slowly pour it down the side. Done. So there we go. The meringue's luscious and creamy. Look at that, just holding its peak perfectly. What I'm going to do is put a spoon of meringue on top of each Pavlova onto the top of each one. So I put a bit of meringue on top of each one. I'm going to go ahead and top it with a bit of strawberry. Done some strawberries, and then for me, a Pavlova is not complete without passion fruit, so the pulp of about 4 passion fruit. And what I love about doing these straight onto the board that I'm going to serve them on is just that little bit of added naturalism that they give by just having them presented straight on the board. Nothing too fancy. Perfect. So here I have my Pavlova Lamingtons, which is the Lamington sponge topped with the chocolate and the desiccated coconut, which is traditional Lamington for me. Topped with the Pavlova meringue, bit of strawberry and some passion fruit. And you know what? Just for a little added touch, I brought this bad boy along just to give these guys a little bit of a torch, get a bit of caramelization on there. If you don't have a blowtorch at home, don't panic. These are just as good like this. So you know what? I'll give it a go. Oh, just a bit of toastiness. For me, I don't want to torch the whole meringue. I want to leave a little bit of that natural meringue there, because for me, the best part of Pavlova is biting down into that marshmallowy centre. So let's give a little bit more of these a go. Yum. Here are my Australia Day Pavlova Lamingtons.